Good morning, and how you doing over there? Today is March 19th. It's about 7 in the morning. I think it's a Tuesday. So I want to get this in here real quick. Then I got to wake up the kids, get them ready for school, and get on with my own day. So, what are we talking about here? Again, I'm on my kick with these splatter westerns. This one here today is called Starving Zoe. It's by Derick Miller from, of course, that Death's Head Press that put these things out around 2020 starting. And they really knocked out about like 10 or 14 of these in like 3 years. And they continue to come out, every year after that. So they're doing pretty good. So congratulations to Death's Head Press and all that. With these splatter westerns, love the idea, love the concept. And after getting a few of these, trying to find like the best discounts on eBay and Amazon and yada yada, I went ahead and found I had some reward points and I picked up all the rest. So I'm going to be doing these pretty often as I go along reading them. And in fact, all the rest of them actually are all these right here. All this little whitish, tannish, gray, this color right here. That whole section of books there is what I have on my shelf to read. And I'll go through them one by one. And I have to say, they're fast reads. And I'm not trying to disparage them or anything like that. It's just one of those things that you pick up and you can flip through them very fast. It's possible the type might be a little bit bigger than other novels are out there. So, and with their the short page count, you can just rip through them like you're just doing summer reading. But hey, you get your story, beginning, middle, end in a short period of time, and you move on. Now, I'll be reading these along the same time as I'm reading my Dresden Files, which are also very enjoyable. In fact, I have a bunch of those down here as well, this whole section. In fact, here, let me just, that there, whole part there is Dresden Files. So I've already owned them, and as I like to go through my whole owned but not read stacks, you'll be seeing these and those coming along the way one by one. Which isn't to say I'm not going to have other books in between. Like, for instance, this blue one up here, that's actually like a parenting book that my wife read. She thought it was fantastic, wants me to read. So I think it's called The Whole Brain Child. I'm not exactly sure what it's about yet, but it will probably make its way high on the list, I think after my next Dresden book, which I'm almost done with. So, there we go, splatter westerns, more to come. So I moved on now to read Starving Zoe because I just finished the last one. In fact, in my last review was They Built the Gallows for You and Me. And when I read that one, I was pretty upset. And in my last book review, I kind of like, I'm not going to say teared a new one, but I was very disappointed and unsatisfied, so I expressed that. Now, I am in no way telling people to not buy that book. And I don't wish the author to stop writing unless the market tells it so. I'm the kind of person that thinks that every book deserves to be written. The same way I think that every movie deserves to be made. Whether you are a biopic on Oppenheimer or you're doing the next installment of the Human Centipede. Everything deserves to be made and made to the public. However, everything does not deserve to be liked. That is not a right that people get to have. So, what's going to happen is you put anything out there, whether it be a book or a movie, and the market will tell you whether it's good versus, they will do this by buying it, by raving it, and other people buying it, whether it be tickets to the theater or books from Amazon or books from Barnes & Noble or wherever you're going to buy your books. So the readers and the viewers will determine what is good, what is bad, whether there should be more. Why do I even mention that book again? Well, when I was doing the review of the last one, there was a person on Amazon who wrote a review of They Built the Gallows for You and Me. And I'll put it up here just so you can see what it's like. But in the meantime, in that review, this person was like, hey, I thought Starving Zoe was horrible, and this book managed to get even worse than that. And I was like, oh, great. I got Starving Zoe in this list of books right here. So am I gonna like? And I have them kind of in the order they came out, which is the way I wanted to read them. Am I gonna run into this halfway through the list? Let me bump it higher on the list, and if it's so damn bad, I can get it out of the way, and then the rest of the books should be a lot better, so I won't have that little bump in the road of enjoyment and pleasure. So, with all that preamble done, let me just say this. I finished reading Starving Zoe last night. And I have to say right now, that review was wrong. Again, this is my sole opinion, just, what I'm trying to say from my mind to you. But I had a great time reading this book. It's all told in the first person. And you get this rambling patois of a street kid turned killer. He grew up in Boston and eventually moved his way down to New York, living on the streets in New York. He finds a little niche for himself by killing people that people shouldn't kill. Of course, you shouldn't kill anybody, but, from a street level view of things. But, he gets tough as nails. He makes a name for himself. In fact, people think that his name is something else entirely, and he just kind of like rides on that reputation. While he's out there one day, he actually notices a younger girl, probably like 8 or something like that, about to be raped by some people on the streets, and he makes his way in there, saves her. And then they kind of like Bonnie and Clyde it for a while. They do this for a long, long time, and he's teaching her the ropes, and eventually they're out there one day, and they go into some details about, like, killing people down by the docks, and as the blood goes into, like, the water, the fishes come, and they're all, like, nibbling on it, so every time he does something like this, he's always talking about feeding the fishes, because that's how he views it. And being a first-person reading, you're getting his thoughts and why he thinks what he thinks. So it's one of those good things where you see the characters' motivations and how they view the world and why what they do is not considered bad in that world. Because you're in context of his head. So eventually they one night are out there and they happen to, do the dirty deed on someone who's like a judge or like a chief magistrate in New York. So now they're kind of really wanted. And they gotta hightail it out there and make their way west. They got enough money to do that and possibly live well out there. So that's where you're kind of following this story along. And yes, it was a young girl that he saves, and they kind of get together, but he doesn't touch her at all with that sense of honor. So it's like, in the midst of all this, not evil, but all these wrongdoings, you still have your own sense of morals, and you're following them. Eventually, time goes on. They make a life for themselves. She grows older. He loves her. She loves him. And when she's really old enough to understand, they actually do get married and start doing what they got to do. They even build a house on the edge of the, I forget if it's Arizona or the Nevada desert, like deep into in Indian country. And they try to make a life for themselves. Until it comes around, Civil War was going on, and he has to actually join the Confederate Army. So he leaves her for like 4 years, and they're writing each other, and you can feel the love between them, and then the writing kind of stops, and all of a sudden, boom, he's let go from the Confederate Army, and he makes his way home, and then things are about to get started. By the time he makes his way home, he finds out that, she's sleeping, he gets home late, and there's a baby next to her, and she's like, what the hell? Love of my life. She messed around on me. What am I going to do? And as they say, here's where things get interesting. So, again, I try not to spoil things here when I talk about the books that I've read that you might want to read in the future as well. But I'll have to say, you've got a bunch of revenge here, or actually vengeance is probably a better way to put it. Being at the edge of the territory, you get that Indian spiritualist, that shamanic kind of witch doctor involved with the whole storyline. Death comes from beyond the grave and stuff, and it gets graphic. And I mean graphic. and its depictions of like torture and death and even the woundings that happen and all that kind of stuff. It really does get this splatterpunk or splatter western aspect going on. Now, from the time he gets back from the Confederacy, this whole book takes place in the week. So every day is Monday, boom happens. Tuesday, boom happens. And it's one of those things where he's got to like watch himself at night because of like the demonic forces against him. And then during the daytime where he can hardly rest but needs to prepare for the next night. So you kind of get this over and over and over again. Again, as over and over again as a total of 150 pages, even after you take out all the introduction side stuff, which might be this much, then you get that much left. And like I mentioned before, he's doing all this while he's narrating his life practically during this. So you follow his thoughts as he's hitting these hurdles he has to get over, and the preparations, and even his wounds and how he has to deal with the wounds and what's aching and what's not. But it's great to get this in that dialect as you're following this man's thoughts. So for example, early on when he was like on this horse trying to get home, he's just complaining about how stupid the horse is the entire time. He just, he thinks that he got robbed, he got hornswoggled by buying this dumb beast originally because he just needed the horse to get home. And shortly afterwards, he just learned to hate it. This horse like walks with an erection the whole time. And that kind of delays them getting home as well. And the horse is just a stupid horse, and I want to kill it myself, but I need it, yada yada. Just hysterical. And you get a real sense of how he hates this horse, but needs it because he's trying to get home to his loved one. And just him doing that from his perspective that you're reading the whole time is fantastic. Another time he might be fleeing one night, or maybe it was in the middle of the day, trying to escape for his life, and he comes upon like an old barracks, like a Confederacy barracks, thinking, okay, maybe there's some supplies here, some people can help me, what happened? And the whole thing is like completely empty. But he does find a chapel, and he talks very, with hatred and reverence combined, of like, you can always spot the chapel, they got that big cross on the top, but what do they get a pass just announcing what they are to everyone in the world? You don't see that on top of a brothel, you don't see it on top of an inn or a saloon, but you know exactly where a church is, and you can see it from miles away. They got that big old cross right on top of it. Who do they think they are? And then he has to go into it, and he talks about how much of a sin it is for him to be in a church, but he also goes into his own mental details about how everyone finds religion, especially when they're the most desperate. So, you're in his head. You get his reasonings and his trepidations for his actions the whole time, and it just kind of carries you along like a really fast-going river, and you're just on a small little raft with no control, and you're just streaming right on down. So, there you have it. Like I said, it's a short one, about 140 pages. That's not very thick at all. Starving Zoe by C. Derick Miller. Pick it up if this seems to be up your alley. Otherwise, if you enjoy what you're seeing here, stick around because, like I said, got a whole stack of splatter westerns right here that are going to make their way out to you. Again, probably this year, they'll all be read, definitely. The only thing I'm waiting for last is on the very, very bottom here is the 13th Coyote, which looks like it's part of a trilogy. And the one below it is, I think, the Ballad of the Were-Vixens. So those two have come out. The second one, I think, recently. So I'm hoping as I'm reading that and the Dresdens and everything else, that eventually the third one come out and I can grab all three at one time. And I'll probably even do one video for all three at once, depending. And they're obviously the thickest over there as well, so we'll see how that goes. In the meantime, like I always say, happy reading, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.